What is up, Astros fans, and welcome to episode 43 of the Believe in Astros podcast on the Believe Podcasting Network, the After Dark edition. I'm Geoff Blum, and my partner, Astros broadcaster and all-around quality gentleman, Geoff Blum, here with me. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and, of course, YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe to keep up with us. Give us a follow on Twitter at Believe in Astros. You can find Blummer at Blummer27 and me at Geoff Blum pretty much anywhere on social media. Send us your comments, your questions. We love seeing them and reading them all. For example, do you have any plans for opening day already? And if so, what are they? I would like to know. I don't have any yet, but I'm trying to get to the ballpark that day. But if not, I will be sitting my butt in front of a television, I'm sure, listening to my broadcast partner.
On opening day?
On opening? Oh, wait. What is it? Is opening day a national?
ESPN? Those punks. Yeah, they took it.
Then I definitely need to be at the ballpark because I certainly don't want to watch it.
Yeah, there's a good chance I might be at the ballpark, but I won't be broadcasting. I may be tipping a couple back.
I thought you were going to say tipping pitches. And then I was going to be like, wait a minute.
That's not this podcast.
Nah, that's a whole other podcast. Quick word for our sponsor, BetOnline. It remains your number one source for all your sports betting this season. Everything from the NFL playoffs to pro and college basketball, UFC, MMA, and more. My sleeper team, the Vikings, lost this weekend. They were my sleeper team to go to the Super Bowl. But my sleeper team, the Jaguars, are still alive. Against all odds in that game, and
since we Chargers,
right, and a couple other notes in betting, the Rockets tonight are playing the Charlotte Hornets for the honor. We're recording this on Wednesday night for the honor of being the worst team in the NBA right now, which is it's not something you really want. I'm just saying.
Well, if Lovie Smith was coaching that team, they wouldn't be the worst. They would win.
They'd get a tie. They'd end up with a tie somewhere along the road. I will say this, however. Your number one Houston Cougars are definitely worth watching right now. Oh, Cougs house. I'm telling you, man. Right, I my alma mater, love U of H. And here's the other thing. I am covering the Final Four this year for the Houston Press.
Stop. Are you serious?
Yes. I'm covering the whole thing right here in H-Town. So I already got my credentials lined up. I'm ready to rock and roll. Oh, it's going to be killer. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. Live betting options, free contests, live scores for almost any sport or game imaginable. BetOnline, truly the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite leagues and events. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to join. Receive 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BLEAV to receive your rewards. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts. So we'll get off the Cougars for a minute because that's a totally different podcast. Although, man, Marcus Sasser is good. But let's talk. Since we are still in the throes of the off season, we're getting closer, much closer to pitchers and catchers reporting, and then eventually opening day. But there was some good news this week. The Astros signed 6 of their 8 arbitration-eligible players to contracts. I'm going to run them down real quick. Let's see. Phil Maton got $2.55 million. That one surprised me a little bit. Might bring that one back up. Ryan Stanton got $3.6 million. Blake Taylor, $830,000 after an injury-lost season for him. Framber Valdez, $6.8 million, which surprised me a little that they didn't extend him longer. But still, that's good money for him. And your boy, Jose Urquidy, we were just talking about in the last podcast, $3.025 million. And Mauricio Dubon, back as a utility man, $1.4 million for him. So all one-year deals, obviously, arbitration deals. I think I was a little surprised that Phil Maton ended up coming back, but obviously they want to keep that bullpen intact as much as possible, I assume. Blake Taylor's a lefty, so if he can get healthy, then maybe that will help them. And what are your thoughts on the guys that signed?
I'm elated about it, obviously, and these are guys right now that are the reason why the Astros continue to have this success, is because of the depth of the organization, and we talk about it so much in the game of baseball. It's club control, and this is part of that club control for these guys. Those first, you go through your first 3 years, you get contract renewals. After that third year, poof, you go into the arbitration portal, I guess we can call it, and you get a chance to negotiate that first big check. And these guys have earned it. So you have those guys in arbitration for another 3 years. So the club control totals 6 years of a player's career. And, it's really one of those milestones for a player to get 3 years in and get to that arbitration situation where you can negotiate, get a big bump in pay, and kind of establish yourself in the league a little bit. But what the Astros have done, I love it. There's still the opportunity. You just talked about Fromber and what he got with $6.8 million. There's still the opportunity that you can erase that number and give him the extension if he does agree to one with the Astros. So these negotiations will go on with some of these guys. I think the idea of Phil Maton coming back was, to your point, not just keeping that bullpen intact, but just keeping another arm out there. And maybe with the emergence of a Brian Abreu and guys, some guys like that, and the consistency of a Ryan Stanek, maybe Maton turns into a longer guy. Maybe you try and stretch him out in spring training and make him that long relief guy, or you create another role for him. So I think it's depth and health. We know how key that is, and that's might be why Phil Maton's going to still be around. You talked about Blake Taylor, and you still have Mashinsky hanging around too. So there's a couple of lefties that are going to be available in the spring.
Yeah, and I think the Astros have always been pretty high on Blake Taylor's stuff. It's just been he's struggled with injuries. I mean, that's been really the problem. The thing about Phil Maton that's great to be back is the serial killer face returns. I've never seen anyone who is as terrifying looking. Oh my goodness, that guy looks like he tortures animals for fun, right? He just stands there like this. Like he never changes. He's like so stoic. It's like Dexter, from the TV
that's
show.
A good call.
He's like it's like it's sociopathic looking. And I know the guy's not like that. You hear interviews, he seems like a very good dude, but on the mound he is deadly serious. So I like that aspect of it. I did think Fromber, $6.8 million is a good number for him. For the Astros, obviously they're going to want to extend him because he's going to get, $19, $20 million when he gets an extension.
Well, don't you want to extend him before he wins the Cy Young?
Yeah, exactly. You would think so. That does leave them with two rather, large, outstanding ones. I want to start with Christian Javier because Christian Javier, they're pretty close. The Astros offered $3 million. He's asking for 3.5. You got to figure that's going to get negotiated away pretty easily. The thing is, I feel like Javier, when you just read what other people talk about Javier and you just kind of read between the lines, this is a guy a lot of people think could be an ace, right? This is a guy a lot of people think. Because this is a guy I don't think many people look. Even earlier this year, we're saying, well, he could be a part-time reliever, part-time starter. But I think in the playoffs in particular and towards the end of the season, it's just he became so lights out. And I think it's that really what's so good about him is he has multiple pitches that do not require him to overexert himself. And those are pitches he can keep for a long time. And he's young. So, I just feel like he's a guy that I think they want to wrap up long term. He might be one of the first to fall off the board in that regard.
That's actually not a bad call because he has had that limited time as a starter, limited time as a reliever. So you kind of have this negotiation where you're going, what are you? Are you this hybrid or are you going to be in a rotation? But I think that I feel the same way you do, that he can be that starter. And I really like what you brought up about his pitches because, the fastball, slider, changeup that he has mixed in there, he's not a max effort guy. He has got a rather fluid delivery. His arm action actually reminds me of Octavio Dotel, that just long, lengthy, whippy arm to him, where it's really simple. The ball jumps out of their hand, and you can duplicate that delivery over and over again and not risk that injury. So I think he's low maintenance. But I think that he's probably sitting at the table going, right now, I'm a starter. You can pay me as a starter. Our number's close enough. You're going to have me in your rotation next year. Let's just go ahead and get this done. But that should get done relatively quickly without having to go to the table. But Christian Javier is an interesting case because he is younger and has maybe one more year of control, and he has a huge upside.
Actually, in him, he might even have two.
Yeah.
I think you're right, though. I think if you ever watch the Pitching Ninja guy, if you ever watch his videos, he had a couple that he showed Christian Javier where he had that the invisible, what do they call it, invisible or disappearing
Invisible.
fastball? Yeah, the invisible, right? And he showed how his arm angle is the same for a couple of different pitches, and you can't, the guys can't read where the ball's coming from. They can't read what kind of pitch is coming out of his hand. And I think that's we haven't talked about that very much, but that's a huge weapon for a guy who has as good a control as Javier does.
Yeah, and it's only going to get better the more he's on the mound, being able to refine the command and refine that delivery and really find that release point and become that much more deceptive, because that long whippy arm, it's hard to explain on a podcast or even on YouTube where you can find us, is it's almost he's reaching back towards second base, and as he comes forward, there's really no reach towards the sky. It's just this one fluid motion, and when you have that length and you have that whip in your arm, you're able to hold on to the ball just a little bit longer and let go of it a little bit closer to home plate. So the deception's there, and when you hold on to it that long and snap that pitch, it creates that rotation and that spin rate on his fastball that allows it to kind of plane out and ride through the zone on a flat angle instead of having that tilt trajectory that a typical fastball has just because of gravity. His fastball defies gravity a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch and see how he grows. The last guy, of course, is the one everyone talks about, and that's Kyle Tucker. Tucker and the Astros are not super close. The Astros offered $5 million. Tucker wants $7.5. I mean, either one of those is a bargain considering what he's going to get with an extended contract. I was having a conversation with my friend today about Kyle Tucker and his value as compared to Yordan Alvarez, because the fact of the matter is, even though they're different players, even though they're different guys, you have to look at it and say, okay, $19 million a year is what Alvarez got. You have to figure that Tucker is going to want more than that. And as much as I love Yordan Alvarez, there's a good argument to be made that he deserves more than that because he is an everyday outfielder, whereas Yordan's going to DH quite a bit. I've got to believe that they are working diligently to try and sign him long-term, and I've got to believe that Kyle Tucker wants to be here long-term. He hasn't indicated otherwise. But they're going to have to pony up for him, I think. And they do have the money to do it this offseason if they wanted to.
No, you're exactly right. The money's there. And I'm kind of curious, too. I wonder, from Kyle Tucker's standpoint, he's already MVP caliber. Yeah. He's going to give you – he's a 30-30 potential guy, especially with some of the new rules being implemented. And that being stated, with the shift rules involved, I would imagine – it's kind of a gamble. It's a gamble on yourself kind of thing. Again, he's going to get paid probably close to $6+ million. But with that shift being taken away, he's going to become, believe it or not, a better hitter average-wise. Yeah. So when you add that to the 30-30, the RBIs, the stolen base, the defense, Gold Glove, there are so many things that makes him a dynamic player. Then all of a sudden you boost that average from 275 to maybe 290. To 300 potentially, all of a sudden you've got a different animal, and that's when Kyle Tucker sits back and goes, okay, now we can really have a negotiation because under these new rules, I'm actually better than I have been in the last couple of years, so let's work out a contract. But both Tucker and the Astros are in a good spot, like you said, considering the money and how well Tucker's playing. But yeah, they're going to come to an agreement. It'll be a fun conversation to have when they do sign him, but he's another guy in that Fromber, Javier category as far as negotiating a potential long-term deal, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm just really interested in where it goes as it, really, because I think of, comparatively speaking, Alvarez just got his deal. But the interesting thing between those two, comparatively speaking, Alvarez is a better hitter, period. He's got better power. He's better OPS. He's better average. He hit over 300 this year.
I agree with you.
He's just a better hitter, period. There's no doubt about it. But Tucker is a much better defender. And so when you factor it out, it's like
Yordan, according to MLB Network, best left fielder out there, bud.
That's right. That is right. I mean
but
big.
I think a lot of it has to do with what you just talked about.
That big ass war coming from his bat is a big part of that, for sure.
Exactly.
But I mean, I think that the thing here's one thing that I'm curious about. I'm curious to know if there has been any discussion, consideration behind the scenes of what it would look like for Kyle Tucker to move to center field. Because Tucker has, it would seem like,
more money.
And you're right. Well, that's part of the deal. He'd get more money at center field for sure. You've got to wonder if he's come to the Astros and said, listen, I want to put me in center. He has the defensive chops to pull off.
I would actually be
center.
curious to know how he feels about that. I don't think I've ever read anything or heard anything about that.
I haven't either. I guess one of the things they talk about is because his arm strength is so great, maybe you don't want to move him out of left field because he's thrown so many guys out at third and, trying to make extra bases. So maybe you don't want to lose that arm out there. But the deal is that the center field is cavernous at Minute Maid Park. If you want somebody he's got wheels, he's got great judgment on the ball. So I don't know. There's a lot of angles to play with Kyle Tucker here. I really hope they sign him long term. I mean, they still have another year or so of arbitration eligibility. He's not going to go away if they can't come to a long term deal. But I feel like the longer you let it go, the riskier it gets. And
especially if he continues on that arc, then all of a sudden it's just it makes it real tough.
Exactly, because then you start looking at it, you're like, oh crap, now we're gonna have to pay him $20. Look, they got Alvarez at exactly the right time. They got him at exactly the right time. This is probably the right time for Kyle Tucker, and they definitely need to be careful about that. That's going to be one to watch. When does the arbitration deadline actually begin? It's another week or so, isn't it? Where they have to go in front of the arbitrator?
Well, I was going to say, I think it's another week, and then you get into, then they have the hearings. They set up the hearings. The hearings are always during spring training, which is obnoxious.
Are they really?
Yeah, they're so you're in the middle of spring training, let's look forward to it. It's going to be a great year. Oh, by the way, Kyle, we got to go over here and try and rip your numbers to shreds.
By the way, you suck, and we're not paying you anything. Here's why you only deserve $5 million.
Such a weird process.
How did baseball come up with that? That's just that feels unfun.
It's awkward. It's awkward.
We've talked about it on here.
Yeah.
How
I just hope it
stupid
gets done. Yeah,
I do
hope
too.
it gets done.
I hope it feels like the Astros, before when it was, before when Click was here, they didn't negotiate beyond, they'd give out their number and then if nobody signed, then that was it, right? They didn't negotiate beyond it. It doesn't feel like this group of guys is going to be that way.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not. I mean, I every GM has their way of handling things, but hardlining some of these guys just doesn't make sense. You got to have the conversation and have that open avenue of conversation before you get to the point where I'm just going to shove a bunch of numbers at you and say this is why. I think you need to, if you can come to an amicable agreement, I think it's better for you long term.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It's better for everybody. Ultimately, long term. So the Astros did sign a few other players this week. The international signing period was this week. They signed 9 guys, including 2 in the top 25.
Some good ones.
Yeah, pretty good ones and pretty interesting ones. I'm going to read you what a couple of quotes from Brian McTaggart's weekly newsletter that he had from the assistant director of international scouting, Ramon Sanchez, who was talking about Camilo Diaz. Camilo Diaz, the 17th rated international prospect. He called him a toolsy, dynamic shortstop with a plus arm and the athleticism to stay in the middle of the diamond. Big, strong build with raw power. Projects to hit in the middle of the order with home run and RBI production. Has a potential to have well above average tools across the board. So this is a guy, when I start thinking about that, and you're like, wait a minute. Jeremy Pena plays shortstop. You're like, okay, first of all, this guy's 17 years oold. So let's hit the brakes on that.
Pump the brakes.
This guy is 3 years probably out from even sniffing, a shot at the major leagues.
Yeah.
If even that. Second of all, when you think he's a good up the middle guy, well, if he does project in say 4 or 5 years, maybe there's an opening at second base. You know what I'm saying? I mean. So there is. I like the fact that he's a kind of a bigger guy. It has the air of Carlos Correa, kind of to him. Bigger guy with a really strong arm. Big, powerful athlete kind of guy. It's an interesting player. And number 17 is no that's no joke in the international world. When you're talking top 20 prospects, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and if you look back on some of the, just look at the roster now. Your starting rotation is heavy on the Latin contingent.
Yes.
They've just signed Jose Abreu again at first base, another great Cuban player. They've Ozocampo. I can't say enough about this guy, and it's mostly because he's a really good guy, and we've become friends over the years. But Ozocampo is really the architect of this rotation. The Yordan Alvarez is going out and getting Yuli Gurriel and Aledmus Diaz over here. He's done such a good job of recruiting this talent and finding this talent. Now he's with the Miami Marlins, which is a great signing for them, and he's going to bring a lot of help as far as the international market is over there. But the Astros have done a great job in that international market finding these guys. And I think it's just a credit to their organization recognizing that there is a lot of talent out there. And that's more to your point about the 17th prospect coming out of Latin America at 16, 17 years old speaks volumes about these players. But these guys are legit, and they're powerhouses, and it's just refining that. And the Astros do a good job of that. They've got that great, academy. It's an academy down in the Dominican Republic that they develop these players so well. And just a little side note, they do a very good job of getting them prepared to acclimate to playing in the States. They teach them English. They how to get through society, how the value of the dollar and things like that. So these guys come over here well prepared. But I'm excited about these guys. Those first two guys that you're talking about have high ceilings to them. And I'm kind of anxious, like you said, in 3-4 years, what they end up developing into.
I'd be very curious to have a discussion in some podcast about that. What their academy does. I know they have an academy. They started one in Venezuela, where guess who came from there? And the academy is interesting because all the tools that they have, because some of it is legal resources. I mean, we saw that with getting Jordan's family to Dominican and eventually into the United States from Cuba. But there's also just that, like you said, acclimating. Houston's a very international city. If you want to get a plato típico here, you definitely can, right? But if you can
get every Latin country style of food in Houston. It's 100%. Amazing.
But if you're in Raleigh, Durham, perhaps might be a little more difficult. You know what I'm saying? So you need to kind of figure those things out. So I at some point we definitely need to revisit that and have a conversation about that, because I think that's fascinating. The second guy they signed, the 21st ranked pick, a kid named Esmail Valencia, another 17-year-old. Their Dominican scouting supervisor, Alfredo Ulloa, described him saying he's a medium-framed outfielder who does it all, above average and explosive athlete. He projects as a top of the lineup hitter who can hit for average power and steal bases, an above average defender. He plays center field and shows a 70 grade arm, which is on the 20 to 80 scale. That is a very interesting, to see that is going to be, if he really does have a 70 arm and he's 17, my goodness. Sound Blummer. You lost your sound.
Yeah, dogs barking in the background. It's crazy. I'm trying to do my best to help you edit this thing.
Dogs barking.
That's
awesome.
But I don't know. I think I saw a video of what's his name again? Sorry.
Esmail Valencia.
Esmail Valencia, and he is kind of lanky, but the speed, you could see, there's certain body action that you can see from these players where you're going, okay, this guy's, as soon as he gets meat on these bones, he's going to look very good what he does. But the dude already has a cannon. That was one of the things that jumped at me on the video, is that all of a sudden the ball is flying out of his hand from right field at 16, 17 and one hopping to third base. So that gives you a good indication. But these guys are incredible athletes, and the Astros have done, again, a very good job of finding these guys. But I have found, having played with a lot of these guys coming up and then watching what the Astros have done and seeing how they develop and get into the big leagues, I'm excited about a lot of these guys. And it's all about developing your future, and that's where a lot of it starts, is out there in that being able to go from continent to continent and find these, gems.
Well, I mean, the Astros are a majority foreign player team. Mm-hmm. There's...
That doesn't get talked about enough.
It doesn't. And the truth is, when you think about it, you're like, okay, Kyle Tucker. You start looking around, you're like Hunter Brown. There's like a handful of guys that you can sort of count. Michael Brantley. who are not foreign-born players. Even Jeremy Pena, So I think when you look at that and you realize that this is a team that is dominated by foreign-born players, that means the Astros have to be good with their scouting. If they weren't, then they wouldn't be fielding a World Series championship team year in and year out with a starting pitching lineup that's made up predominantly of guys from other countries. I mean, it's like this year, Hunter Brown's going to be the only guy in the lineup that's not born out of the country. And I think it's really Lance. And Lance McCullers, right? It's a credit to them that they have been able to do this and that they were that forward thinking early on in that process. Going back to the early parts of the 20-aughts when they were first starting to go down into different countries and look for these players and mine talent. Good for them, and good for them for looking out for these guys, because obviously there are plenty of people. I'm Blum, it. There are plenty of people out there in the world of sports who want to take advantage of players, whether they're young and and impressionable, or whether they're from another country, throwing money at people, promising them big things and not delivering. Good on the Astros for doing the right thing and trying to get these guys to the major leagues and make them not just good ball players, but good citizens of baseball.
No, that has a lot to do with it, and that's money allocated in the right place, because you are developing them. They are an investment, and once they get to the big leagues, they're going to be able to acclimate, have conversations, hopefully with you and I someday, where we're having interviews with them, and that's all part of the process in developing as a big leaguer. But I like the idea that the Astros go out there and find some of these, really good young Latin players. You start to develop them 3-4 years, like we talked about, and all of a sudden they're big league ready. And say you have that one big draft where all of a sudden you find some college players or some high school players that develop nicely, and that mesh and that combination of some of those young Latin players with some of the local, stateside guys that you've drafted, and all of a sudden you've got yourself another contending team.
Plummer, just think about this for a minute. These kids the Astros have signed internationally are your daughter's age.
Oh, dude, trust me, I'm looking at love my daughters to death, and I think I'm a very good parent at times. But I'm going, man, there's no way I'm throwing, them to the minor leagues or anything like that. Good Lord. But
just think about that. Like, they're 17. It's young.
Well, could I imagine if they were hyper talented, say in volleyball, sending them to France or, Italy to go play on one of these professional teams at 17? It's crazy.
How old were you when people really started knocking on your door and started, trying to recruit you and that sort of thing?
I was probably around 16 years old. In high school, I had the height, and I had, I was a lanky type player, but I had a very good arm. And then I turned 16, and all of a sudden I figured out how to drive the ball a little bit more. And I think that's when heads started to turn a little bit. But I knew I had a lot of maturing to do, physically and emotionally. And that's why going to school was so good for me. But I signed early to go to Cal, and that pretty much turned off the professional avenue real quick, because I knew I had a lot more developing to do, and thank goodness I did.
Good for you for knowing that. Most kids at 16 or 17 are just like, woohoo! It's like, it's just instant party.
I was 18 and went 6 hours away from home, and I was like, what the heck is going on out here? This is wild. I know, granted, it was Berkeley, but
it's wild because if kids, right, under normal circumstances have a hard time handling it, the pressure on newly minted professional athletes has got to be just ungodly. I know they talk about these. There was a good story a couple of years ago about young NBA players and how, and they were tying it into, there was that great story in Sports Illustrated about all the athletes that have wound up like broke and homeless and all this, because they get in the leagues and they make a bunch of money and they don't know what to do with it, and the leagues don't know how to help them. So
people take advantage of them, like you hinted at earlier.
Exactly, and they get themselves into trouble. So anything you can do to help them. Again, they're 17 years old. My Lord.
Well, you talked about the pressure of it, and that's one of the things that I'm most impressed with is some of these guys really develop poise, and we're spoiled by watching the Javiers, El Reptil, Yordan Alvarez, Framber Valdez. Think about you have this skill. and everybody in your country plays that game. And now all of a sudden at 16, 17, you're that good to go out there and literally alter your family's trajectory in life. That's that you talk about pressure. That's a whole different kind of pressure, and they go out there and perform. It's incredible.
I mean, look at Jeremy Pena, right? Came from a baseball family, came up sort of the right way, went to school, matured, and now he's reaping the benefits of that. And the Astros are reaping the benefits of it as well. Yeah, exactly. And good for them for doing that, because I know if somebody would have said, hey, listen, Geoff, you're 17 years old. Here's $1 million.
I'm in. Let's go.
Here you go. Here's $1 million. Thanks. I'll see you. Like I would have been out of my damn mind. So I
would have broken the door on the way out, man.
Exactly. I just been like, I've been making it rain up in here.
Yep.
It would have been hilarious. All right, so the Caravan and the Fan Fest is ongoing. Blummer, when is your tell us? I want to hear about when your appearance is coming up. I know you're getting ready to do something.
Well, the reason I delayed the recording of this podcast is because I had the Caravan this morning. Hey. I was out all day with David Hensley and Corey Lee as we went to Chick-fil-A. David Hensley did a heck of a job behind the counter. Nice. And then we went to the Ronald McDonald House down by the medical center.
I saw the photos from that on the Astros feed today.
Yeah, Ronald McDonald House does amazing things, and what some of those families are enduring, it makes me grateful for the Ronald McDonald House, because those families are going through so much, and I think it also shines a light on how great Houston is as far as a medical community to help these families.
100%.
And then we went to a Tejano. I don't have the itinerary in front of me, but the Tejano Center it was down by NRG, I think. Mm-hmm. It actually might have been a little bit closer to Pearland. I'm totally wrong. Yeah. But we went down there, had a little pep rally for these kids, and the fellows went and read a book to sixth graders, and we went down the hall taking some pictures, smiling, shaking hands, and then we had a pep rally with ninth and 10th graders.
Oh, cool.
And I had a chance to host that, kind of pump them up and explain Corey Lee's situation, David Hensley, shooting stars are there, Orbit showing up every once in a while, and then we finished off with a trip to my favorite place,
St. Arnold's, baby.
Yep, all over my chest, St. Arnold, and it was kind of funny because that's my happy place here in Houston, along with several other ones. But sitting down and doing a Q&A in front of the beer garden with 65, 70 degree weather, sun setting behind the city, the view's unbelievable, and I mean seriously, and I sit down with the juicy IPA, and those two guys looking at me like, dude, you're having a beer? I'm like, heck yeah, I'm having a beer, man. This is what we do. I'm like, do you get yourself a beer? So it was kind of funny. It was kind of funny. They're like, we can drink. I'm like, let's have a good time with this, man. Because that crowd at St. Arnold was going nuts. It was great.
How was Corey Lee? What's the word? Did you get a chance to chat with him?
Yeah, he's fun. And I think, going through the process of this Q&A and trying to, talk these guys through last season, trying to talk through this season, because David Hensley's unique in his own sense because he got those World Series at bats. So that's a great conversation in itself. And then Corey Lee is a guy that got drafted in 2019. COVID hits. He doesn't have a 2020 season, so his growth is stunted by not having a season, and now he's playing catch-up as fast as he can. And after a World Series year, Christian Vasquez is now in Minnesota. Guess what? There's an opportunity for him to break camp, on that roster. So he's an excitable young man. He's incredibly athletic. I think that's, with a lot of these catchers these days are getting more and more athletic, and he's one of them.
Yeah.
He can swing the bat. I think there's just, it's just getting the mind to cooperate with the talent. And once that happens, he's another guy that's going to be a high quality catch and throw guy, swing guy. And if he gets a year under his belt, splitting time or working with Martin Maldonado and working with his pitching staff, I think that really benefit a guy like Corey Lee. And again, it's all experience. It's just to get the at-bats, get the grind going for these guys and get that experience in.
Absolutely. Blummer, we're going to have to do a show down at St. Arnold's. There ain't no doubt about it.
Say when.
I'm going to call my boy Lenny Ambrose. I don't know if you know Lenny.
That's my guy.
Lenny and I are boys. We go back.
Lenny's my guy.
Oh, we'll have to debate that with him and find out exactly what the sitch is. I will find out. I've known him and his wife, Amber, for quite a number of years through social media. Actually, is how we first met.
They are great.
They are fantastic. Great people. Really, really great people. Used to live right around, not too far from me. Actually, I occasionally bump into Lenny at HEB when we're shopping for groceries. So
strong.
Yeah. So we'll have to definitely do one down there because that is a St. Arnold's is a kind of a remarkable place. The building they're in used to be the HISD Food Services building.
Yep.
And they very wisely got it at the bottom of the market and converted it into like a pretty cool place.
No, the history of St. Arnold is great, and their whole business model is remarkable because they have a good enough, lineup of beers to go much bigger, but they are crushing a certain market. They are in a great pocket, and they continue to crush it. But they also put H-Town in front of everything, and that's what I love. Is the community aspect of St. Arnold is amazing.
Absolutely. I love those guys. All right. Well, thanks, everybody, for joining us for yet another episode in the books. Blummer, got any final thoughts before we go? What do you got going on this weekend?
FanFest. It's on January 21st. January 21st, starting at 11, going through it might be 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon. Get out there.
Yeah, FanFest is fun. There's always a lot of cool stuff going on at FanFest. You get a little bit more up close and personal view at Minute Maid than you do during games too. There's kind of it's kind of cool if you've never been to Minute Maid and kind of gone closer to the field and seen all that stuff. It's pretty cool.
No, I was just going to say it's a little more interactive, and it's actually really good for kids because, like you said, you get down in the lower bowl. Sometimes you get to walk around the warning track. You get to go hang out in the bullpen. You get to go out and hang out on the AT&T set out in center field, and then you start to wander around. And there's a couple of opportunities that potentially are penciled in that are lined up that I get to host and MC.
Nice.
And the players I'm going to be with, man, I'm excited about it. And I've been around these guys, but coming off a World Series year, and some of the guys that I'll have, fingers crossed, hopefully, have the opportunity to talk to and hang out with, that'll be worth getting down there. But again, the access to Minute Maid Park and the players is what makes FanFest that much better. I'm
going to try to get down there on Saturday. That seems like it'll be a blast.
It will be.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'll be there from 12:30 to probably 3:30, 4 o'clock.
Nice.
Yeah.
Blummer rocking the FanFest. We just call him Mr. FanFest. It seems
the energy's going to be off the charts. It'll be great.
I'm sure. We'll be back next week with fresh pods brought to you by Bet Online. Huge thanks to all our listeners and viewers. As always, guys, you guys are just the absolute best. And I wouldn't say that to just anybody. We just tell it to you. So keep it coming.
Trust me when I can vouch for that.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. Just 70 days until opening day. I keep the countdown going. It's just getting. I'm wearing my Rockets hat tonight, because I want to root on my Rockets. As they're
trying to get that good mojo.
Trying to get that good mojo. Maybe get Wemby. I'm just saying. Maybe in the draft. But let me tell you something. I am dying for the Astros to start again. It is. Look, you got a baseball in your hand right now, Blummer.
No, I feel the same. Yeah, I've been flipping this thing the whole time, but I feel the same way you do. I'm ready.
I'm totally ready, too. Okay, guys, we will talk to you next week. As always, go Astros.